And my friend who was a co-dance captain with me was talking about it. He said, "Are you going to work on the Spider-Man show?" And I said, "The what?"
It was a powerful property.
The eyes of the world were upon this Spider-Man.
And it seemed like it was constant drama from that jump off point.
It hasn't even opened yet, but there has been another accident for the most expensive Broadway musical ever.
From the creator of Politics Weekly.
Not only can the actors get hurt, but the audience can get hurt.
A death might occur right in front of you.
Does whatever a spider can, the story of the Spider-Man musical. Featuring a special appearance from Ben Brantley. Now available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey everyone, welcome to Politics Weekly. Politics Weekly is a weekly nonpartisan podcast featuring some of the biggest names in politics and portraying some of the biggest political stories of the week through both left and right-leaning lenses. Hosted by award-winning journalist Nolan Cleary, the former editor-in-chief of the Hudsonian newspaper, Politics Weekly has been listened to by over 15,000 people worldwide. The views expressed by guests on our show are not necessarily the views expressed by the host, Nolan Cleary.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Politics Weekly. I'm here with Mike Imbasciani. He is from the Freedom Chronicles podcast. Thank you for joining me today, Mike.
Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it. How's it going?
Good. So before we get into the stories, tell everybody a little bit about your podcast, the Freedom Chronicles, for those who may be learning about it for the first time.
Yeah, so I started the Freedom Chronicles, and it's a show. It's available on Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you can get a podcast, and it is a video podcast as well. So I'm a millennial. I'm 26 years old right now, and I'll be 27 in November, and I'm a professional musician. That's my normal job, quote unquote. And after COVID, COVID shut down the world. I was deemed non-essential. So I was trying to find something that I could do. I mean, I'm in the free state of Florida, so we were very lucky. We were able to get back to work in May of 2020, but it was still very slow. Venues were coming back slowly but surely, and, some venues were smaller than others, so those smaller venues didn't come back. So I wanted to have an avenue that I could talk about kind of my side of how I experienced the government, because everybody thinks the government doesn't affect them, and that changed, especially during COVID, because the government literally had they don't have the right, but they used, their opportunity to tell people who was essential, who was non-essential. And so I kind of wanted to come out with a podcast. And my co-host, Ken Lovejoy, he's been in radio for decades, and he has a radio talk show host on AM radio locally here in Southwest Florida as well. But I wanted the podcast to be a way for me to talk about the news and talk about things that were happening from a millennial point of view and from my co-host point of view. He's older, middle-aged, and he's been in the Navy. And I, in my environment as a musician, I feel had a different look on things. And I'm also an entertainer, so I wanted it to be entertaining. You watch podcasts like, Louder with Crowder, and obviously I'm a conservative, so you watch Louder with Crowder, or you watch Tim Castor or something like that. They're also putting in entertainment. Gone are the days of the 70s even where you'd watch the news. It's the 6 o'clock news. They come on and go, all right, today your top story is blah, 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 and you move on and you move on, you move on. That morphed into what you have with I guess they're calling it the legacy media now, with Fox News and CNN and all that, where it is opinion, but they hide their true feelings most of the time, I feel. And that sort of news comes out now more than ever. And so in the space that I'm in, the space that you're in, that's where people are. There's more and more young people drifting towards this independent media. It's so important to do that because you're getting real stories. You're getting stories that don't have an agenda. You're getting stories that just are what is happening in the world. of course, there might be a bias one way or the other, but you find who you like to listen to, where you think you're getting the best information. And that's what I try to do, is give the best information on my podcast and work on how you can have solutions. I'm wearing my shirt, which has my mascot, Freedom Cow, on it, and it says, "Get loud locally." I got to interview General Mike Flynn's brother, Joseph Flynn, and in our conversation, it came up that everybody feels like they're one person, and one person can't change the world, but they can change their community. So they have to get loud locally in your community. It starts at the local level, and from there, it can get to the federal level. So my podcast brings news, entertainment, and solutions to younger, middle-aged, and older generations, and we have a good time.
All right. Well, with that being said, let's get into the news. A recent attempt to censure California Congressman and U.S. Senate candidate Adam Schiff failed recently. The attempt made by Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, a Republican, failed with 20 Republicans voting against the proposal and every Democrat in the U.S. House of Representatives opposing it. The censure was over Schiff's claims that he had evidence that indicated that President Donald Trump, who was president of the United States at the time, had colluded with the Russian government during the 2016 presidential election. Schiff is a candidate for U.S. Senate in 2024. He is running for the seat that is being vacated by Democrat Dianne Feinstein. What are your thoughts on the proposal to censure Adam Schiff, and what are your thoughts on the proposal failing?
I'm not surprised that it failed. Obviously, I'm conservative, so I am Republican leaning. That being said, I don't trust a lot of the Republicans either. I think whether you are right or left, you can look at Congress and say that almost every single one of them is corrupt one way or another. It's the unfortunate state that we're in right now. And I think I'm not surprised that it failed. I'm glad that they tried to do it. Anna Paulina Luna is a representative here in Florida as well. 20 Republicans basically stopped it from happening. So again, you have to look at why would they want to do that? It's because Schiff was stating things that were not true. You also have Eric Swalwell there, who had relations with a Chinese spy, but nobody goes after that either. So I find it interesting that they did get it to a vote. I think that's progress, but I'm not surprised that it failed, and I'm not surprised that 20 Republicans also voted against it.
All right. Well, with that being said, let's move on to the next story. Longtime journalist Daniel Ellsberg, who wrote for the Washington Post, has died. Ellsberg was most well known for his involvement in the uncovering of the Pentagon Papers, which essentially revealed that the United States government, specifically the administration of then President Lyndon Johnson, had lied about the Vietnam War. Then President Richard Nixon attempted to sue to stop the release of those documents, but was unsuccessful as the Supreme Court ruled in the Washington Post's favor. Ellsberg was 92 years old. What are your thoughts on the death of Daniel Ellsberg?
It's very interesting, and I actually, before we started, I didn't realize that happened. But yeah, 92 years old, pancreatic cancer. You need more people like that. You're seeing that with the FBI leaks, with what's happening with Biden and the bribery allegations and everything going on with Hunter Biden and the laptop. It's important that people pay attention to what's going on behind the curtain. That's the biggest thing. What the news tells you isn't enough. People have to go out, do your own homework, read into it, and find out the truth. And you're seeing more and more people be those whistleblowers. It's more important now more than ever. And so it just shows you nothing changes. Nothing changes. He just died at 92 years old. The Pentagon Papers, what was it? A Pentagon Papers leak. It was a leak just like they're leaking things now. Now, obviously certain things, it depends on what's going on. You have what happened with Vindman there under the Trump investigation, and those were deemed lies. But it just shows the government loves to cover things up, whether it's the Vietnam War or what's happening with Joe Biden now. Real journalists like that expose the truth, and it's important that people constantly seek the truth. So,
all right, with that being said, let's move on to the next story. The White House is responding to a transgender individual that went topless at an event. President Joe Biden held a pride event at the White House where he had a gay flag flying next to two American flags. At that event, there was a transgender individual, an influencer named Rose Montoya, whose breasts were exposed at the event. President Joe Biden has responded to this, announcing that Montoya is banned. Montoya has apologized for this. What are your thoughts?
Well, the first thing was Biden broke the flag code, which, again, in the grand scheme of things, you can look at what things happen in government and what rules that they choose to follow and what rules they choose not to follow. I think it's those little things that are important. And people are saying, well, there was an American flag on top of the White House. Well, that doesn't count. For special events like that, the American flag is supposed to be centered and above every other flag. Now, you can get into the argument about whether or not there should be a pride event, period, at the White House like that. Obviously, the Biden administration is going to do what they're going to do. Fine. Trump administration did what they did. But to have those three transgender individuals, one of which, Montoya, biologically a man, go topless like that. There was a tweet that Biden tweeted out during the 2020 election, just before the 2020 election, I believe, where he said, we need to bring back decency to the White House. Anybody, I don't care what you believe in, whatever you might say, to see that image of those three individuals in front of the White House is not decency, is not what the people's house should represent. And that is why you're seeing the boycotts of Bud Light. You're seeing the boycotts of Target. Normal people, whether they're political or not, are getting sick of that look. Now, I do find it interesting, and obviously I think they made the right choice in saying that they banned Montoya from going to the White House. But the damage is done, and it was all around Twitter, and everything happened, and now the Biden administration has to... It's just another thing that has happened for the Biden administration. But I think it's the bigger picture of it shouldn't have happened in the first place.
All right. Well, with that being said, let's move on to the next story. Another Republican has announced his candidacy for the White House, joining the race with candidates such as Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, Chris Christie, and others. Francis X. Suarez is the mayor of Miami, Florida. He has announced that he will be joining the Republican primary as he seeks out the White House in 2024. Suarez is considered more liberal than most other Republican candidates. In 2016, he endorsed Hillary Clinton's bid for the White House. Additionally, in 2020, he endorsed Joe Biden for the presidency. Suarez's candidacy is mostly considered a long shot. Most polls find him only polling at 1%. What are your thoughts on Francis X. Suarez, the mayor of Miami, Florida, announcing his candidacy for the White House?
Well, like you said, he leaned left. A Republican mayor in Miami, that's like Republicans that you see in California. They're rhinos, Republican in name only. And it's not surprising, obviously, another one getting involved. But it's useless. It's a useless endeavor. It's a waste of money. Nobody should donate to him because it's just going to be useless. He's polling at 1%. It means nothing. And it's just the same reason why Chris Christie has entered, the same reason why Mike Pence has entered. I mean, where was Pence polling? Around 4%, maybe 2%. I know Vivek Ramaswamy has gone up in the polls. DeSantis has still gone down in the polls. I find it interesting that it's another guy from Florida. Obviously, DeSantis is the governor of Florida. I love him as governor. He has been a fantastic governor. We were hit in my area very hard by Hurricane Ian. He came down here, took care of it, and everything came back quite well, and he handled it very well. That being said, he needs to drop out. I don't believe he should be running for president. Same reason why all these other people getting involved, the Chris Christies, the Mike Pences, now this mayor from Miami, people are too focused on the Republican infighting that is happening, especially between Trump and DeSantis. And they're ignoring the fact that if Republicans want to win, they have to stop the infighting and focus on why did the Democrats win? Because they have the ground game that the Republicans do not have. And they ballot harvest. Say what you want. Where it's legal, they do it. I'm sure where it's illegal, they do it as well because, it is what it is. But it's a bipartisan show. So people are focused too much on all of this infighting. And at the end of the day, it'll just get pushed up, pushed up, pushed up. Before you know it, we'll be in the general election. I still think Trump will win the nomination. That's why you notice DeSantis had to change the rules in Florida so that he could run for president without leaving the governor's office. Otherwise, I ask people all the time. I'm here in Florida. I ask people on my show. I have interviewed people on my show. I said, what is the name of the lieutenant governor of Florida? You love DeSantis. If DeSantis runs, he's going to have to, at the time, he was going to have to leave office as governor. Who's the lieutenant governor of Florida? Nobody knew her name. Or,
Yeah, Jeanette Nunez.
Yeah, Jeanette Nunez, right. Not many people knew that, let alone what her policies are. So we just reelected Ron DeSantis to governor, and he's now running for president. It's unfortunate that that happened because we just reelected him. And it just came out that he's moving a bunch of money from that war chest of running for governor and putting it into his war chest running for president. So if anybody donated to his campaign running for governor, hoping he was going to stick around for the whole term, and now he's moving that money over to run for president, there's going to be a lot of not very happy people doing that. But again, you're not talking about the Miami mayor, because all that's going to do is split the vote more. But nobody even really, if he's more on the liberal side, he won't pull many votes anyway. He'll continue to pull at 1%. He'll add to the coffers and the war chest money wise, and then he'll eventually drop out. But it's, as the Democrats love to say, it's a nothing burger.
Let's move on to the next story. Former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio has been fined for his brief presidential bid for the White House in 2020. The former Democratic mayor is being fined over $450,000 for using city taxpayer-funded security and moving it over to other states as he campaigned for the White House. This is a historic first for any presidential candidate. This has never happened before in history. What are your thoughts on de Blasio being fined for his involvement in his 2020 bid for the White House?
It's never been done before, but are we really that surprised? Again, it's the corruption that has run so deep that they go, oh, well, there's just this money here. We'll just move it over here. Nobody will notice. And if they do, what do I have to do? I have to pay a fine? That's it? All right. What's the big deal? We move on in life. I mean, Hillary Clinton had to pay a fine for something she said. Obama had to pay a fine for something else he did running for president. They don't care. When the bottom line is they can get away with these things and all they have to do is pay a fine. And yet you have Dinesh D'Souza, who under the Obama administration, he donated, I think, too much money, or there was some, I forget the details, but it's the same type of thing. It's considered illegal, but a bunch of people constantly do it. Nobody, you pay a fine and you move on, quote unquote. But he got clipped by the Obama administration and got put in jail for doing that because he was a Republican and Obama was a Democrat. So I find it interesting. Good. They're going after de Blasio. He's no longer, nobody likes him anymore, especially after COVID. But okay, fine. He's going to pay the fine. And in 2 weeks, everybody will forget and, they'll move on to the next thing.
Well, that about wraps up this week's episode of the show. Mike, thank you again for joining me. Before you go, do you want to tell people where people can listen to your podcast, The Freedom Chronicles, and where you and your podcast can be followed on social media?
Yes, look up the Freedom Chronicles on Rumble. You can follow the Rumble page. And we have a locals community that you can join through Rumble's the best way to get to it. There's a little red button that says join. That's our exclusive community. You can join. We have a bunch of exclusive content on there, longer interviews, extra stories we don't get to on some of the episodes and sort of things like that, live streams, that sort of thing. So you can become a member of that. Rumble's the best place to watch. We are on YouTube. People can subscribe to the Freedom Chronicles YouTube channel. Sometimes YouTube isn't a friendly place for free speech. So I always say we're on YouTube for now. We are on Spotify. You can watch the podcast on Spotify, which is nice. We are on Apple Podcasts, which is audio only. We're on BitChute, Brighteon, all that good stuff. So that's to watch the show. And you can follow the Freedom Chronicles on Instagram. And you can follow the Freedom Chronicles on Twitter. That's at Freedom Chron Pod.
All right.
Get loud locally, folks.
All right. Thank you again.
Hi, I'm Nolan Cleary, award-winning journalist and host of the hit podcast, Politics Weekly. I'm here to tell you about my new website, nolancleary.com. It's full of political analyses, a link to my podcast, and predictions for upcoming elections. If you want to know everything there is to know about upcoming elections, go to nolancleary.com right now.
Welcome back to Presidential Profiles 2024. Today we'll be discussing Joe Biden, the President of the United States seeking a second term. Biden was born in 1942 in Pennsylvania. His father lost his job, forcing him to move to Delaware. Growing up, Biden grew interested in running for public office. He graduated from Syracuse University. In 1971, he was elected to the Newcastle City Council, but Biden wasn't there for very long. 1 year later, he ran for U.S. Senate in Delaware, challenging incumbent Republican Caleb Boggs. Early polls showed Biden trailing by a huge margin, but later polls had Biden winning. Biden won by less than a point, making him one of the youngest senators in U.S. history, as he was elected at just 29. Shortly after his election, Biden was hit with tragedy when his wife and daughter were killed in a car accident. Biden considered resigning. In Congress, Biden was a moderate, fighting against desegregation of busing. He was re-elected in 1978 and 1984 by large margins. In 1988, Biden ran for president. In the Democratic primary, Biden polled well. That is until it was uncovered that Biden had plagiarized Neil Kinnock, the English opposition leader. Additionally, Biden had lied about his grades in college. The scandal caused Biden to jump out of the race. Biden continued to be a moderate, advocating for a tough-on-crime bill. Biden was re-elected in 1990, 1996, and 2002. In 2008, he ran for president again, but faced big competition in the Democratic primary. Biden was only polling at 1%. After doing badly, he dropped out. However, Illinois Senator Barack Obama, who won the nomination, chose him to be his running mate. With the 2008 recession hurting Republicans, Obama and Biden handily defeated Republicans John McCain and Sarah Palin. During his time as vice president, Biden was a key player in the Obama administration's efforts to pass the Affordable Care Act and sexual assault. The two were re-elected in 2012, beating Republicans Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. Biden was hit with tragedy again in 2015, when his son Beau Biden died of brain cancer. Rumors spread that Biden would run for president in 2016, but he faced challenges. Polls showed him trailing Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primary, and he wanted to support his family after a loss. Biden decided not to run that year. After Clinton surprisingly lost to Donald Trump in 2016, Biden decided to run 4 years later. Biden ran in a competitive field of Democrats in 2020, this time getting the nomination in a close match. He faced incumbent President Trump, who was saddled with COVID. It was reported Biden had won and received 81 million votes. Biden was the oldest president ever inaugurated, and was saddled with scandals involving his son, Hunter Biden. Now he runs for re-election.
Thank you for watching Presidential Profiles 2024. Listen to Politics Weekly every Tuesday wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe to the NolanCleary.com YouTube channel and hit that notification bell. Head to NolanCleary.com to check out our website.